So I usually give talks on male fertility and sexual dysfunction and erectile dysfunction. But this is the first time I'm giving a talk outside the United States for mentoring. And how do we create effective research teams in urology? I think it's just very important to understand that anybody that is going to start out doing research in urology should understand that I think long gone are the days when you can do research on your own. You can, but it will be very, very slow. But if you are able to somehow establish teams and mentor them and grow the team, then there is a very big potential for making sure that you are productive and you continue to be productive in research. So I think what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about how to establish a mentoring team. How do we establish a research team? Who are all the different elements within the team? Who can do what? And how do we grow such a team? And then how do we get research ideas? How do we get, we published close to 400 manuscripts, and all of that requires ideas. We just can't, hope to just write on the same topic over and over again. And these are different topics, and how do we get ideas? And then how do we continue motivating the team? Because a lot of people these days, there are lots of easy ways to make money, and research is not one way to make money. Seeing patients, being in clinic, operating are the fastest ways to make money. So how do we motivate people to do something beyond just seeing patients, operating, and making money, and try and stay in research? And then finally, I'll conclude with some parting thoughts. I think it's important to understand, no matter what we do, we've all had very important mentors. When I started off my undergrad and medical school career, I had very good mentors. I worked with Dr. Joe Barone initially when I was at Rutgers, and then I went to Cornell in New York, where I did residency training, where I was fortunate to work with people like Dr. Peter Schlegel, Philip Lee, and Dory Lamb, who's now at Cornell. She used to be at Baylor, but really good mentors who taught me how to do research. And I think it's important to understand, especially if there are trainees listening on this phone call and on this webinar, I think you have to take time to learn research. Nobody's good. It is not part of Campbell's Urology. It's not part of any textbook that you learn. You have to sort of learn this on your own, or you have to seek mentors who do research and sort of learn the process of research. What is a hypothesis? What is a good study design? What are the different types of study designs? How do you analyze the results? What is a control group whenever you do a retrospective study? What is a case series? How do we write case reports? And once you learn all of the process, how do we effectively present the data? How do you, what are the different types of graphs in which you can show the data that you have? And then finally, how do you analyze the data? What is statistics? What is a t-test? What is a chi-squared test? What is a Cox proportion hazard analysis? How do you analyze all of the data? And then finally, how do you actually write a manuscript? What is an introduction section? What is a discussion section? How do you write the methods? How do you write the results? All of this takes time. People think research is just done as a hobby, that it is done as a pastime. And we can just learn it as we go along, urology residency or fellowship, or when you're a young attending. I think those that are interested, those that want to contribute to the field, need to understand the process of research, dedicate time to learning the process of research, and know how to do it seriously. A lot of people around you can see patients, right? A lot of people can operate very well, but very few people have the thought process to apply questions that they see in clinic to say, hey, why don't we go back and either look at this, or why don't we prospectively look at this question moving forward? Why don't we study this as an intervention? Why don't we study these questions in this fashion so we can get some answers? I think contributing to the field is what we as a younger generation as need to do, because most people are not doing that. And I think it's just very, very important that we try and do that. when I then moved from residency at Cornell, and then I did a fellowship at Baylor with Dr. Lipschultz and Mokira, and then came here to the University of Miami in 2015, and it's now been 8 years, and I can tell you it's been one of the most productive part of my career so far. And it's important. It's important to work with young people. It's important to motivate them, inspire them, show them that you can do more than just see patients and contribute. And these are all people on the team at different levels, and we'll talk a little bit about where they all come from. So, what is the definition of mentoring? People always think it's the mentor teaching the mentee, and that's it. This is the one-sided relationship. You go do the project, you do this research, you go write this case report up, you publish this paper, you present this abstract, and it ends there. Really, that's not the case. It is a bi-directional relationship where the mentor has so much to learn from the mentee, because the mentee is now asking questions that the mentor does not have answers to. And I think that's where people mostly make mistakes. And the mentors need to be open to understanding and learning from the mentees. I think long gone are the days where there is a big boss that just tells everybody that's younger than him what to do and how to do things, and then they just go do it and come back without asking any questions. And I think that process has to change, because only when it is a bi-directional relationship where the mentor teaches the mentee and the mentee goes back and asks questions and in a way teaches the mentor again, that's when real research questions form, questions get analyzed critically, good research projects get done, and good publications happen because of mentees teaching mentors. I can tell you the number of questions that have come up just because of me, maybe just half in all of those 400 publications. And the remaining half have all come from mentees. Why don't we go back and look at this, Dr. Ramasamy? Why can't we look at this question? Some questions are not wrong and incorrect, and I think that's where the mentor needs to be like, no, that is not a question worth answering, because either it's already been answered because you know the specialty and you know the field very well, or it is not worth answering it this way. Why don't we go back and look at something else? And I think that's probably the biggest change that has happened in the last decade, wherein now mentoring is viewed as a more bi-directional relationship, and the mentee plays an active role in this relationship between a mentor and a mentee and a trainee. So how does this happen, and why should this is no longer just there is one mentor here and all the mentees are surrounding? You can see beautiful graph that Camila Suarez put together, basically showing that it is a multi relationship model, wherein there is one mentor, yes, but there are mentees surrounding him that can also play the role of a mentor. For example, urology fellows who have finished training, who have done residency, who have done their fellowship, are in their fellowship, are very interested in mentoring residents. Residents, in turn, are very interested and can help out and mentor medical students and get mentored in person, in return by the chair or by the attending urologist. And I think we have to view this concept and let younger people take ownership over their project, their research ideas, and let them sort of lead the way and teach other people. And I think that's the only way to make a very productive and a successful team. And the big boss and the big mentor needs to let younger people mentor and guide others along. Because if you think you want to give out all of the instructions, you want to tell everything how it's done, you want to say how the project is done, it's never going to be productive, because everybody is now just depending on you and counting on you, and that's not that's too much work, and you can't handle all of that. And I think that's what's very, very critical, is to understand that that the mentees need to be also serve as mentors in their own right. And in medicine, we have a lot of hierarchy, right? We have medical student, we have residency, then we have fellows, and then we have attending. And if we all follow that same path of attending tells fellow, fellow tells resident, resident tells medical student, and then medical student tells resident, resident tells fellow, fellow tells it. If we follow that, it's very good in clinical practice, I think, when that happens. But I think in research, in doing research projects outside of clinical practice, we have to view this as a team-based model. Medical students should be able to tell the attending if they think that this is incorrect or the project is not going right or there are problems with the project. Attended fellows need to be able to tell residents to take a different path and do something else with the project. And I think that's probably what is most important, because now you're cultivating younger mentors that can go on in their future to go and become mentors and make the team much bigger than what it started. So really, I think empowering young people at the residency stage level, at the fellowship stage level, and even at the young attending stage level to sort of mentor and not just receive mentoring, I think is just very, very important to understand that as a concept. So what are different roles that people play in our lives? There's three very, very important roles that I think all of us should understand. One is called as a coach, one is called as a mentor, and one is called as a sponsor. And all these three roles are very different, and sometimes, very rarely, can people play all the three roles together. But for all those young people listening out there, I think it's just important to understand what roles different people play in your career. And so you can go to those people with certain problems. And I'll give you very good examples. A coach is someone who teaches how to do things. For example, a coach is an endourologist who teaches how to do a proper PCNL. It's not a mentor. A coach can be a person how to do the different steps of robotic prostatectomy. And if you're in the lab, a coach is someone who teaches how to do PCR, how to do Western blot, how to do animal microsurgery. All of that is a coach, someone who teaches how to do stuff. And unfortunately, in medicine, we think all our coaches are our mentors. And anybody who teaches very well, we go to them and start talking to them about like career and jobs. And not all good coaches are good mentors. And I think it's a very important distinction to understand. Just because someone who does a great robot prostatectomy and can show you the steps and teach you nerve sparing and lets you do nerve sparing doesn't automatically become a very good mentor. He or she is a very good coach, and I think you should just understand that that's the role that they play. And we will, in our career, see a lot of good coaches, a lot of people, and a lot of bad coaches, surgeons who will teach you what not to do, not very good surgeons. And listen, as important as it is to learn good surgical technique, it is also important to see bad surgical technique so you can understand what is good and bad. And when you become a surgeon, you'll understand what to do and what not to do, more importantly, and how to get into trouble. And then from good surgeons, you'll understand how to recover from trouble. Mentor is a person who's actually helping you in your career. They will sit down with you and they will tell you, this is what you should be doing. This is the fellowship you should be thinking about. This is the job that you should be considering. This is where I think you should apply for. This is how you should get involved in Colombian urology. This is how I think this is going to be good for your career. More importantly, the mentor will tell you what's not good for your career. Do not do this project. Do not go down this path. Do not take that job. And personal life too. Do not go out with this partner of yours because this is not going to be good for you. So somebody that basically gets involved in your life, both good and bad, is a perfect example of a mentor. These people are rare to find, and you want to find them very quickly and stick on to them. And you can have more than one mentor. Somebody that you discuss your life with, somebody that you discuss your job search with, somebody that you discuss your research projects with, and you can have more than one mentor in your life, and it doesn't have to be just one person. Just like you have many coaches, somebody teaching you PCNL, somebody teaching you prostate surgery, somebody teaching you pediatric urology, different coaches, you can have different mentors. Somebody that you share your life with, somebody that you share your job search with, somebody that you share your research projects with. So different mentors, totally okay. You don't need to have just one mentor in life. Sponsor is very different. And this is someone who basically offers you promotions and career opportunities, and they talk about you when you're not there. If you're a medical student listening to this, you want to get into residency, then the sponsor is a person that talks about you at the meeting where selection happens. If you're a resident applying for fellowship, the sponsor talks about you when you're not there, trying to get you that fellowship spot. If you're applying for a job and you need that job so badly, a sponsor is a person that calls them and talks to them. So sponsors talk about you when you are not there, so when you're absent. And these are people in positions of pretty high power. So for example, the chairman of your department is a good sponsor. The dean of your medical school is a good sponsor. big attendings, who have big names and big clouds are all sponsors. To these people, you do not want to go and tell them about all of your life problems. You don't want to share with them about your relationship troubles. You don't want to tell them about your financial problems. They don't want to know your problems. They just want to know that you're good and you show up and you're reliable and you're punctual and you can do the work and you're a good guy or a girl. And so just remember that when you interact with these people, and sponsors are those kinds of people. So anyway, long story short, there are different types of people that are going to move you along in your career. You need good coaches, you need good mentors, you need good sponsors. And without all of those things, you're never sort of going to keep moving ahead in life. And the best thing that I've learned is in urology and anything in life, what you know is important, but who you know matters way more than what you know. And I think that's why this is just so critical to understand that you know a lot of people and they all think that you're a good guy or a good girl, and they will like move you along in your career. And I think it's just so critical to understand, just because you learn, just because you study urology well, just because you go and do surgery very well, doesn't mean you're going to move up in your career. You need people to help you along in your career, no matter which path you take. I don't care which path you take, private practice, academics, fellowship, it doesn't matter. And I think it's just so important to understand that you need to continue knowing people and making sure that they are aware of what you want and how you're going to move ahead. So how does this all work? And I think this is important to understand. Okay, fine, I am interested in finding a mentor, and how do you like go through this process? So I think it's just important to understand there are people around you in your institution or immediately outside your institution that can help you mentor. Not every relationship is going to succeed, just like in life with partners in marriage. Not every relationship is going to work. So don't hesitate to go and start relationships, because that's the only way you're going to find out if it's going to work out or not. And if you don't even go and ask for help, nobody's going to come and seek out help to you, be like, hey, Dr. Suarez, I'm going to come and help you with this because I think you're struggling with this part of your life. Nobody's going to do that. You got to reach out. You have to make the connection, and you have to figure out what you want. One of the most important things you do when you start the relationship is tell them what the expectation of the relationship is. Some mentors, like I talked about, you want to discuss about your research. So tell them, Dr. So-and-so, I am here to meet with you because I want to discuss this particular research project. I am struggling with this research project. I want to do some research. I want your help. Or to another doctor, I am having all of these troubles at home. I don't know how to balance my work life and my home life. I need your help in trying to figure this out. Or I am struggling at work. My residency is not going so well. I am unable to finish my rounds on time, go to the OR on time, and go catch up at home on time. I don't know how to prioritize my tasks. I want to learn how to do all of these things. So different mentors for different problems, but you got to define what that role of that relationship is. Some mentors will be able to do all of those things very successfully, and that's totally great. But some people will not be able to handle all of that stress. Oh my gosh, I have to now talk to him about his boyfriend-girlfriend problems. Now I have to talk to him about his research project. I have to talk to him about how to go on from the third year to the fourth year in residency because he or she is struggling. If all of that, you put the onus on one person, that's a lot. And they may say, this is too much for me. You need to go find other people. And you may lose that mentor in your career. So make sure you define what that relationship is and what you as a mentee want from that mentor. Because you may want all of those things, and if that's fine, ask them if they are available to take on and help you with all of those tasks. But if you can't, at least try and ask for help and make sure you define that relationship very, very clearly. So let's talk about how all of these qualities will actually help, and how do you find a good mentor. So a mentor is usually someone who is available. They need to have time for you. You cannot say, hey, Dr. So-and-so, I want to meet with you, 3 months from now. and they say, oh no, sorry, I don't have time for you, or they give you a 15-minute time slot, and then they come and meet with you for like 10 minutes and they say they have to leave soon. So if they don't have time for you, then you have to go find someone else. The other important thing is they are actually listening to you and giving you feedback, not just listening to you and saying, don't worry, great, you're doing a fantastic job, move on. And importantly, they should be available for feedback. And they have to be available, they have to be accessible. And listen, problems in life don't happen planned, right? You can't say, oh, I'm going to have a problem on August 15th, and so I am going to email my mentor now so I can sit with him on August 20th to discuss the problem. Doesn't happen all the time. And so whenever problems arise, they should be available. Yes, mentors have a lot of things going on in their own personal lives, in their own personal careers, that they should be willing to give you the time, because that's when you need them the most. You don't need them when the problem is solved, but you truly need them to help you solve a problem that has just risen. And so make sure you find people that are available to you, that are accessible. You got to be able to reach them, right? You got to be able to call them, send them a WhatsApp, send them an Instagram DM. They should be available to you in some way to answer those. It cannot be an email that they get back to you about an urgent situation, that you're having a life crisis at home, something going on with your relationship, something going on with your parents, something going on at work that you need help right away. But then they get back to you a week later saying, can we meet now? By which the problem has already gone and solved. So good mentors, very rare to find, but if you find them, make sure you can keep them and like we talked about, define that relationship, what it's supposed to be, what it's not supposed to be. But there are good mentors around. People come to academics, people come to train residents and fellows, not going to complete private practice because they want to do this job. They want to do something beyond just treating patients and operating and making money. They want to help other people grow around them. And there are people around these that you got to go find them and make sure that you use that relationship very, very well. And I think it's important the mentee needs to also pay back. You can't just expect this to be a one-way relationship like we talked about. And I think it's important to understand that the mentee also show back some credit back in that relationship. For example, the mentor gives you a certain project to do. You got to be able to deliver that project or that paper or the abstract or the data on time. Be on time. Make sure you keep your end of the bargain. You keep your end of the relationship. And I think it's just so important. And you got to be around when the mentor says, oh yes, let's meet on this date at this time, or give me a call in X minutes. You got to be available. You can't say, oh, I am so sorry, I am busy now, I cannot do this now. And so I think it's just so important that the mentee also understands that they have to put in as much effort into that relationship as the mentor. And most relationships don't work out because either the mentor is not available, not accessible, doesn't respond to emails on time, or the mentee does not get back on time, does not give the project on time, doesn't do a good job at presenting on time, doesn't show up to the conference. I mean, all of those things have happened. As many good examples as you see, Kamala showed all of those good examples of mentees. There are also enough mentees who do not make it to those pictures, who do not actually show up on time. And so I think it's important to understand this is a bi-directional relationship. Mentor holds that end of the bargain. Mentee needs to be available and also hold up that end of the relationship. So how do you form a research team? I think the next few slides will hopefully understand how do you actually make some of these relationships. So one of the important things to understand is nobody is too young to be part of a team. People often think, oh, these medical students, they're not useful, they're not helpful, they're too young, they take too much time from me, they don't give back. I think it's just a very incorrect way to look at things. Students these days are very smart. They have access to resources that we don't have access to. They have access to ideas that we don't have access to. And I think it's just very important to understand that medical students, you have to invest time though, because they come as a blank slate, right? They don't know anything. So you got to teach them what research is, invest the time and grow them. And as they grow along, they also start mentoring other young people along. And I think the concept of team mentoring is just so critical and so important, because once you invest time in medical students and you see them grow, they sort of give back and try and understand how to basically now start mentoring and how to grow other people along. And then clearly, as you have seen in growing early career faculty and early career fellows, I think it's just very important to understand that as you grow them, they will also not just grow as a mentee, but they will grow as a mentor and try and give back in different ways. And I think it's just important. The best way to do this is to sort of set expectations in every relationship, make sure you're available. And the way we do it, at least here at the University of Miami, we have monthly research meetings. We know who within a project is doing what. One person is working on the statistics. One person is collecting the data. One person is writing the introduction and the discussion section. One person is writing the methods and the results. And one person is taking charge of submitting the paper and putting everything back together. I think that's the best way to do research and to know who is doing what. And if everybody has to match to that expectations, and if you don't, that's when you know you kick them out of the team and you replace them with another member that is productive. And I think this is the key. You can't let just one person start a project from finish to end. I think it's just very, very difficult to remain productive if you do it that way and depend on one person the entire time. There's a beautiful picture that we got at the AUA this year. It was the Ramasamy team dinner. For those of you that are on Instagram, you can follow me. It's my last name, Ramasamy, MD. We post pictures of the team all the time. But as you can see, the team is not just filled with urologists. It's not filled with doctors alone. There's andrology lab directors. We've got observers from Brazil. There's a pediatric urologist. There's the scientists, PhDs who've done reproductive biology. There are fellows who help me both clinically and in the OR and in the clinic. We've got PhDs in molecular endocrinology. We've got medical students who are joining. We've got residents. We've got nurse practitioners, and so the team is made up of a diverse group of people who bring in their own talent, who bring in their own expertise. Some are there to learn, some are there to teach, and some are there to both learn and teach. And I think that just understanding the concept of diversity, trying to actually have a lot of people together around you is probably very, very important. I think, like I said in the beginning, long gone are the days where everybody does, it's one person doing one project from start to finish. I think that day and age is gone. I think if we are being serious about establishing research, we got to come up with a team. And the team has to be diverse. It has to have PhDs. It needs to have andrologists. Especially if you are starting male fertility teams, you need to have somebody specialist in embryology and andrology to do all of their laboratory side. You need to have nurse practitioners who can help you recruit patients into clinical trials. You need to have residents who can come up with ideas, fellows who can sort of spearhead the ideas and spearhead and finish projects. And you need to have medical students who are important to collect data, analyze the data, and critically understand how studies get done. So I think you have to have different levels of the team, and diversify the team as much as possible. Not just have one attending surrounded by 5 urology residents, and that's often not going to work because different people have different time commitments. There are students who have a lot of time, students who have little time, residents who have little time, fellows who have a lot of time. And so really combining all of the forces together, I think, is probably the biggest secret to success. And I think people make mistakes by just doing research with one type of people. I only work with residents. I only work with fellows. I only work with medical students. And I think to be able to work across the career span, to try and take everybody's expertise, try and share skill sets, and try and share time is probably the biggest secret to success. And I think the important thing to understand is that mentors need to be available. The millennial generation is changing. Long gone are the days where, people still send me emails, but that's rare. People communicate with me through any means these days. We have group chats. People call me. They text message me through iMessage. They WhatsApp me, send me emails. Some people want to meet me in person, but not everything requires an in-person meeting. Oh, do not discuss this with me because we're going to discuss this at the meeting. No, people have questions. We live in this Insta generation, right? Instagram. Everything is like right now and here and now. It's no longer, I'll get back to you in a week later. I'll get back to you, 3 months later. Doesn't work that way. Young people want answers, and they want answers right now. I know it's a little difficult as mentors to like sort of answer everything right away, but that's what the expectation of the millennial and the Gen Z generation is. I have kids, and I understand that concept very, very well, and I think it's just important to understand that that as mentors, you need to be available through any of those means to answer questions. And I can tell you the number of both patients and students that Instagram message me through DM, because that is the most favored form of communication. And a lot of people send me WhatsApps and iMessages. And again, another favorite form of communication. Dr. Ramasamy, what do we do with this project? Do you want me to analyze this? Should we wait for collecting data on this comorbidity? Like any sort of research question gets asked through all of these things. It's not like, oh, let's wait for the next research meeting next month to discuss this. No, we need an answer right now, because we can go on to do this project and finish the project. And I am totally okay with it, because I'd rather know the problem right now, and instead of waiting for 4 weeks and I'm asking, what happened to the paper? Why haven't we not submitted this yet? Like, oh, we had this problem 3 weeks ago. We never got back to you. And I think that's incorrect. And I think that's where the mentors, I think, need to pitch in and say, I need to know about the problems right then and there so I can solve them, so you can move on. Or we cannot obtain IRB. The patient is not consenting. And all of those problems get communicated through group chats and WhatsApp and Instagram and iMessages. And I think mentors who are in that generation, who are always sort of formal emails, formal Zoom meetings, come and see me in person, I think have to realize that this generation of Gen Z and millennials that are doing work do not want those formal forms of communication. They want informal ways to communicate. And I think all of those ways are certainly just very important. And for all of you guys listening out there, if you guys want to message me and ask me questions, I'm totally open to it. Like I said, I do understand Spanish very well. So if you want to ask me in Spanish, I can certainly get back to you. But we'll be in English, but certainly we'll be able to help and answer questions. So what do we do in terms of how does research actually happen, and what is the process of this research? And I think it's just very important to understand that everybody does certain roles within the task. For example, somebody is very good at lab techniques and can do PCRs and Western blots very well. That's what their role will be. They will generate the data very well. Somebody is very good in writing manuscripts. They've written many manuscripts before. They know how to use ChatGPT. They know how to write the papers very well in a scientific, critical way. They will do that. Somebody is very good in writing the entire statistical part and do the stats and analyze the data and present the data very well. And they will do that. And I think it's just important to understand everybody comes in with different skill sets. And as a mentor, I think we should know that what skill set each person has. When you're meeting with somebody for the first time, you ask them, what can you do? What are you good at? Oh, I'm good in statistics. I'm good at collecting data. I can write manuscripts very well. I was an English major and I know how to correct manuscripts very well. So you understand what the skill set is and give them that particular skill set. A lot of people make mistakes by taking someone who is a clinician, who's never seen laboratory before, never seen animals before, and say, you go to the lab and do animal surgery and do Western blot. And I think just because you need that as a mentor, that part of that project done, asking someone who has no skill set in that and asking them to go do that part, that's when you fail. That's when you make a mistake, because now you're going to have an unproductive researcher, unproductive project. That project is never going to finish. And I think just remember that matching the skill set of the mentee with the project is important, as opposed to the opposite way, where the mentor has a project and then you find a person and then try to fit it in. And the art of delegation is key. It's just not to delegate. Oh, just give it to someone. It's not giving it to someone. It's giving the right task to the right person with the right skill set, I think, is the most important. And people often make mistakes there by just giving every task away to someone else. So how do we actually protect someone and move this relationship forward? I think it's just so important to understand that the mentees need to be able to ask questions to you. You've got to be able to let them come up with ideas. Let them come up with project questions. Let them ask you questions. Question the way that you're doing stuff. Because if you don't ever encourage questioning and innovation, then it certainly defeats the whole purpose of a mentor-mentee relationship. So many times mentees have come up and told me, this is not the way to do this. This is not how this data is. I think we need to ask this question a different way. We talked about the JAMA paper on COVID vaccines. That idea came about especially from a mentee, and I think it's just important to understand that you let them ask questions. So how do you basically design all of this, and how do you sort of do this team very, very well? I think the important thing is to make sure that this is a circle wherein you give back ideas, you take ideas from the mentees, and you go back and tell them what is right and what is wrong. And I think a lot of people think that, let me tell idea, you go do the idea, come back and tell me. And they leave it as a unidirectional relationship. And I think that's where we make mistakes by saying that, by never asking mentees what their thought process is, what their ideas are. And that's probably the best way that you could actually succeed in making good research ideas. So how do we get research ideas? I mean, we've got quite a few in the pipeline, quite a few that are that we've already published on. And I think, how do we get ideas? Some we get from the mainstream media. A lot of questions that we've answered in the past have unfortunately been come through public. What are some of the ideas that people are talking about? What is affecting male fertility, erectile function, and what are some of the big ideas that are being discussed in the social media news? COVID was a perfect example. There were lots of studies that talked about COVID vaccines basically being bad for fertility, bad for sperm counts, and people advertised saying that COVID vaccines would cause bad sperm counts and make people sterile. So we literally got that idea for JAMA from tweets from mentees who were reading the layperson news and saying, hey, why don't we do a study on COVID vaccines and sperm, because there are tweets and the social media blog posts about COVID vaccines being bad. COVID being bad for sperm, people talked about COVID being bad in the lungs and in the liver and in the kidneys. Like, hey, why can't we study it in the testes? And we took that idea and we studied. So a good place to look for ideas is to follow the mainstream media. And fortunately, it's not hypothesis based, but at least to quell some of the myths that happen in social media. I think we have to do research to show that it doesn't exist. Even now, people believe COVID vaccines make people sterile, but at least we have research to prove otherwise. And I think that's where some of the ideas can come from. So much of restorative therapies research has come from also doctors out there that basically stout saying, oh my gosh, shockwave therapy is fantastic. It'll cure every erectile dysfunction. You take plasma from people, spin it down and put it inside the penis, and now that basically causes beautiful erectile function. And you see a lot of doctors out there touting these things, and some non-doctors basically pushing for these things and to get men to sign up for these things so they can make some extra cash. I think that's probably very, very important. And we are now doing many studies now actually here at the University of Miami to show what works and what doesn't, both with shockwave therapy, with PRP, both for erectile dysfunction as well as for Peyronie's disease. And this is one place where you can get ideas from, where there's lots of doctors doing a lot of wrong things, and you're like, okay, let me go back and figure out if this is the right thing. Whether does it work and does it not do work? All of this takes time, effort, and money, and it's not easy. But I think even if you make one small contribution to the field that'll change the direction of the field, I think that then you have succeeded in doing that. Like we talked about, social media is a very good place to get ideas from and to be on social media. I think it is very important for trainees because so much of information now is in social media. People used to go to websites 10 years ago to go get information about whether cell phone radiation affects sperm or not. But now they just go to social media to ask those questions. And I think it's just important that we as urologists, we as doctors stay active on social media and actually say what's right and what's wrong. And I think that's why being both on Twitter and on Instagram, I think it's just critical to be there because you want to quell some of these quacks out there that basically tout misinformation. And I think it's just very, very important that we are there. We say what's right, what's wrong. We publish research, but we also promote it on social media, because that's the only way people get information. Nobody goes to PubMed.com, PubMed.org, and like look up papers. All of those days are long gone. If you don't publish the paper on social media and discuss the implications of the findings on social media, you might as well have not done the research at all, because that's the only way lay patients and lay people these days get information from. Beautiful example of something that's happened in the United States. Roe v. Wade got overthrown, and now the interest in contraception has peaked tremendously in the United States, and the number of vasectomies have also gone up tremendously. So again, another great idea of research is something that happens socially, something that gets touted on social media, that now you can take and study if there are more vasectomies being done in the United States because of this, and also the big difference between red states and blue states, Republican versus Democratic states, and all of the abortion laws that are getting passed to see if vasectomies increase or not. And again, great idea for research. So I think it's just important to understand there are different ways in which you can do research and understand research. There's basic science research, there's clinical research, so there's epidemiological research, and then secondary research based on all of these researches, systematic reviews and meta-analyses. So many ways in which you can do research and answer research questions. And I think it's just important to understand that there's just not one way to answer one particular question. There's different ways to understand different questions. And I think that's probably the most important. And finally, how do you actually motivate people and young people and inspire people to understand, to do all of these things? And I think the most important thing to understand is to show them the benefits of doing research, of being productive in research. And this is just very, very critical to understand that this is beyond just doing research, that it actually leads to good contributions to the field, to be recognized in the field. And I'm very happy for the Gold Cystoscope Award this year, because they finally recognized all of this work that went in terms of mentorship, in terms of guiding young people, inspiring young people to move along, not just for research and so on, but to actually mentoring that helped me win this award. And I think without the presence of a team, I think this would have been impossible. And I'm so happy that the AUA recognized the contribution, not just to the field in terms of science and research, but also for definitely with mentoring and helping young people. And so to finally conclude, I think it's just very, very important to understand that mentoring is a very critical piece in all of our lives, both to be a good mentee, to be a good mentor. And I think I cannot stress this part of our lives as being very, very important. There are good mentors, there's bad mentors, there's good mentees, there's bad mentees. And I think we should be both a good mentee and a good mentor. Don't ever think you're too young to be a good mentor. You're never too young. You always have something to offer, both at your level, medical students, residents at your level, peer-to-peer mentoring, but also at the level below you. But also be a good mentee, because that's the only way you're going to move ahead in your career. And I cannot stress how important networking is, how important getting to know people is, no matter which walk of life you choose, no matter where you end up. I think it's just so important. Really thank everybody, Camilla, for making these beautiful slides in Spanish. She is a wonderful success story of a fantastic mentee who came on from being a student here and now is going to join urology residency here at the University of Miami. And we're certainly very, very proud of everything she has done with the team, and we hope for her to contribute, to continue contributing to the team. Very happy to take questions both here and in the future. Those of you that are on Instagram, if you want to DM me, it's my last name, Ramasamy MD. Those of you that are on Twitter, very good for peer-to-peer. So if you have urology questions, urology papers, that's where most of the information gets shared. And then for those of you that want to still email me and ask me questions or want to come as an observer in the future, later on in the fall or next year, please send me an email. It's my last name, Ramasamy, at miami.edu. With that, I would like to stop sharing, which let me see how I can do that. And happy to take any questions.